Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello, and welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson. And on this episode, I'm going to talk about what I like about you. If you want to attract somebody, you want to be attractive, then think about what it is you like about somebody. And you know what? Just being attractive. Let me talk about that. Talk about what you like about somebody. Talk about the person. Make them the focus. What do you like about them? Because it's so easy, it seems, to come up with things that we don't like. I mean, part of it is just our ability to verbalize things that seem to be more on the negative. And, everybody likes a good controversy because it allows somebody to have an opinion. But when we start talking about things that we like, then it seems like we can be subject to that judgment, that opinion, because somebody, remember, they're going to turn it on us. They're going to talk about what they don't like about what we say. And I say, make it personal. When you talk about something that you like, make it personal. And especially in what I started out with talking about is when you like somebody, or you want to be attractive to somebody, you want to tell them what you like about them. Is it their hair? Is it their style of their clothes? Is it their personality? I mean, I tend to like, the intangible things. It's the personality. And speaking on that, because that's about the authentic part of them. Some people are very nurturing and very caring. They have a very pleasant voice to listen to, and they seem to go out of their way to be a beacon. I like to think of them being a beacon of kindness and happiness in their own life. And I like to ask people how they got to that place. What was their journey? And, people are really interested in sharing their story if you ask them. Because I learn a lot of philosophy from individuals who've obviously been through adversity, but maybe have had people who are mentors, or a grandparent, or a parent, or a coach, or something in life, or a significant other that has really helped them to sharpen their perception about how to handle life. Because it's not always about the drudgery. And interesting enough is people who are positive, they like to be around other positive individuals. The snarkiness and the sarcasm and stuff, it has a place. It's comedy. It's humorous. But, I tend to save that for other people. That's not my thing. I like people who are philosophical and who've read something about of other people who have had a journey and share how to overcome. Because you are in this life to learn. Not just endure hardships, but you're here to learn. And you can be a product of that learning. And oftentimes, if you think about whatever it is you're going through, you can come up with your own philosophy. Because it's not always about doing something somebody else has done, but it's about applying the lessons that you've learned and how to improve it yourself. And then you have your own story to tell. And I would like to think that would be interesting, and that's positive. And no matter who the audience is, because it's about being authentic. But back to the topic, what I like about you. It's when you've lived that experience of going through adversity and overcoming. And when you notice somebody else does that, it's great to point that out for them. Because you may find that there's some interesting parallels about your journey. And I think what happens when you share that kind of fellowship, and I'm going to use that word, but there's man or woman, when you share that, then it sort of reinforces the idea that you're doing life right, that you're doing it okay. And overcoming, and there's a lot to deal with in life. Overcoming, it feels good to be able to be a champion in your own life, in your own experience. One of the things I talk about often in terms of living, we have people that are altruistic. They want to do things for other people, and they get something out of that. And the extreme of that is the white knight, and that's the person that just wants to do things for other people because it makes them feel like a hero. Well, I don't say endure life for that reason, because that's not. There's obviously underlying issues about that, and you need to take that on. But I'm talking about from the aspect of living your life and sharing, fellowshipping with someone else, and then learning from each other how to support each other. And I've learned many different things from that. I'm struggling for words here because there's so many stories that come to mind about adversity. I'm going to share one with you. When I was a little kid, I used to hang out at the airport. That was my favorite thing. And I'd ride around on my bicycle, and one of the things that I really wanted to learn how to do was fly an airplane. Well, there were lots of people that were coming and going through this gate what that gate represented to me was a stopping point. I mean, at the time I was like 10 years old. So, what's a 10-year-old kid going to be doing out at the airport other than just staring at them taking off and landing? There was a gentleman there who saw me standing at the gate, and he invited me to come over and look at the airplane and just to be around it and touch it and feel it, and it wasn't going to hurt the thing. And I want to emphasize it. This is before people were worried about all the weird stuff that happens to people. That's never been my experience, and thank goodness it hasn't. Okay, it was just a nice person that wanted to share something for a little kid, and I got to be around the airplanes and touch them. And eventually I went to work for a flying club, literally washing airplanes. And this is what I spent my weekends doing when I was a teenager for a while. And I learned how to taxi airplanes, and I've since gone on to fly, lots of different airplanes. And it's been a great experience. Well, what this individual liked about me was that I was a little kid who was interested enough to be there, to admire, and to take it in. And when the person asked me, the gentleman, Oscar Margraf, I'll never forget him, when he asked me what was it I liked about airplanes, I just told him I loved the sounds of engines and that they could fly, and I wanted to fly one day, and just had my own story to tell. And he shared that was the same thing that inspired him when he was a little boy to want to be around airplanes. So you see how the story sort of comes together. And, we do that all throughout life. We meet people and we share our story, and then it builds us up. Well, what I can say that did for me is it built my confidence to take on not only that one thing in life, but there were so many other things that I took on as well, because I learned through sharing my story and being validated, being reinforced by somebody I respected, that my life has gotten better. I mean, I look at the opportunity that I have right now to be able to share my story with you. I'm sitting here in a studio, in a virtual studio. I got a computer in front of me and these big screens, and I'm recording this. But I'm thinking about all the other people out there, all the other talented people that haven't yet had the opportunity to do this, and how grateful I am that you're listening to me. So, number one, I'm thankful for that. That's part of my story. But I'm also wanting to be authentic and sharing my story and saying that whenever you have an interest, to invest in it, put yourself out there, and, risk failure. Risk taking whatever it is you dream about and trying to make it happen, because it's part of that journey is your story. And that's what I'm going to like about you. Your story, your journey. Be willing to share that. In my last podcast, I talked about being authentic. Being around airplanes when I was a little kid didn't interest a lot of other people, but those people who were interested, who had something of their own that was very compelling to their growth and their development, they made for interesting people to listen to. Now, I don't consider myself an attractive guy, but I can be interesting, and I also like listening to other interesting people. So that's my story. I'm going to take a short break, and I'll be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson, and in this segment, I'm going to talk about what men are thinking. I know a lot of women wonder, what are men thinking? Are they telling me the truth? What's the deal? Well, I'm going to share with you. Men think a lot of different things. Men are strategizers. They have an idea of what they want, and then they go after it. Now, women are attracted to guys that seem to know what they want, and they go after it. You know, men shop. When men shop, they go in, get what they want, and they leave. Women shop, they tend to graze. They tend to look up and down all the aisles, and that's their style of doing it. So I present that to you as being more of a masculine, feminine kind of thing. Men go after what they want. Well, one of the things that you have to understand about men, and when I say understand, is just understand their thinking. I'm not saying that you have to accept it, but if you understand their thinking, then it might help you deal with some of the miscommunication that happens. Men strategize, and by that, they learn to hunt. And by hunting, sometimes you have to deceive in order to get what you want. You have to fool it in order to capture it. And by that, I'm explaining that's just one of those survival kinds of things. So if a woman thinks that when a guy is approaching her that, I don't know if I can trust this guy because he's on the hunt. Well, that might be some of the pathology that explains some of this thing. And, it's not just enough to say, okay, appreciate the fact that the guy's coming for you because he's interested in having you in his life. There is the, feeling, wow, I feel special because of that. But it's about really getting to how do you know who that person is? And I've talked about this in a couple of other podcasts. It's about asking the right questions. It's about asking questions that can reveal who this man is, that helps unearth, okay, is this guy using the deceptive tactics in order to capture me, and then the real guy is going to show up? Because some women pretend as though they don't know that this exists. And the unfortunate fraud in that is they tend to buy into it and think that they're going to change the guy. And by change, what I mean is say that, okay, he used these sort of interesting methods in order to get you in his snare. And just by the nature of that, guys tend to be a little cagey. And that's just guy speak, but I'm describing it in as nice a way as possible. Because in order to get guys to be totally above board, totally authentic, sometimes you got to just plant that microphone in the room and hear what's really going on in their private conversations. But that's almost impossible to do. You kind of have to be friends with them yourself. And how do you do that is you spend the time with them and see what the reaction is. And I know there's an old adage, it says actions speak louder than words. And I have to tend to agree with that. There's always caveats to any of this, and I'm not going to always talk about the exceptions, but I'm just going to point out that there are a lot of things that happen in between the lines, and you got to be open to understanding that happens and see it when it happens. Here's one of the between the lines kind of things. It's to say that, when a guy is being thoughtful, he's not necessarily being thoughtful because he wants to get sex from you. Sometimes he's being thoughtful because he wants to be appreciated for not only being thoughtful, but for being that way about you, specific as an individual. Okay. As opposed to just saying nice things about people or just doing nice things. You know, guys like to be recognized for that. So that's not necessarily about the hunt. Remember how I said they use deceptive tactics to get what they want? You know, they'll be nice to you because they want sex. It's not always about that. And you know what? If you think that that's what it is, come straight out and ask and wait for the reaction. You know, if he gives you that deer in the headlights kind of look, oops, I've been discovered. Okay, well, then you got your answer. But if he comes back with, you know what? I really think about you, and I think about all the hard work that you put into things, and I'd like to be someone who appreciates you because I know, you know, sometimes you don't feel appreciated. Well, there's your answer. And I think guys are strong enough in being able to represent themselves that way. But when it comes out the other way that, you know, they're just after you because they have a carnal need to feel like they need to, you know, be sexual beings, sexual animals, well, understand that about them. And if you're okay with that part for the time being, then be okay with it and don't condemn it, because when you want that in a man and he's able to deliver, appreciate it for what it is. But if you feel like that it's becoming a little one-dimensional, then you got to speak to that and address it for what it is, and help create the space for a different kind of relationship. And if not, then be willing to say, hey, you know, this is not what I want, and move on. But that could be hard to do if you've been in a relationship for years and years. That sounds like, you know, a major breakup, but I've got other podcasts on that. So it's, you know, what are guys thinking? Here's another example. When a guy says to you, says, hey, you know, I was wondering if you, you know, had any plans for tonight. Well, here's what he's thinking. He's got an idea about something he would like to do, and he wants to find out ahead of time. If you already made plans, then he's not going to necessarily try to say anything that's going to interrupt that, because he doesn't want to get on your bad side. Because if he has plans with his buddies, he's kind of fishing around to see if you are going to be okay with him going to do something else and not with you. So you would ask, I've got so-and-so and so-and-so to do, and I was thinking that you were going to go with me. Well, he's going to read that as saying, okay, he's going to go. But if you give him the okay to be with his friends, now he's going to appreciate you for understanding that about him. Now, if he hasn't been spending time with his buddies, good. He wants to spend time with his buddies. He's going to appreciate that. But if what you want is for him to go with you, then you need to state that. Say that up front. It's better that than to say to him, what does he want to do? And for then he says he wants to spend time with his friends, and then you turn around and object to that as if he's supposed to read your mind. You see, that's why guys tend to play the deceptive card first, because they don't want to be at odds with you, feeling like, okay, I don't want to ruin my good communication with her. You see, so I throw the fake out, the deception out there to find out what she really wants, and then seeing how I can fit in what it is that I want. And you know, sometimes it all comes together. Sometimes you're saying the same thing, but you're saying it different ways. I mean, that's always great. But realize that if you say what you want, it helps the guy know what he's going to do next. Again, he'll throw the deceptive card out there to figure it out, and he's waiting for you to tell him. But if you do just the same thing that he's doing, throw a fake also, now he's really caught in a spin, because he's trying to figure out, okay, is she playing the spin card on me here? And I'm really confused. That always trips a guy up. You know, think about it. Guys are creative, and because they are that, but women can be a lot more creative than guys can, and guys are vulnerable to that. So know that, and I respect it for what it is. And another thing that I have a lot of respect for is when, you know, I don't know if your observation has been, but when people have been in a relationship long enough that they create their own little shorthand, their own little code of how they communicate with each other. You know, for example, when people have been together a long time, they can sometimes finish each other's sentences, and it seems kind of cute to watch it, but it's an interesting dance. They know how to dance. They can mirror each other. They can do all kinds of really interesting long-term relationship sort of things, and I admire that. I admire that glance across the room which says, okay, we're done here, let's leave. And or when the salesperson comes to the front door and you are probably short of words to be able to say, okay, no, I don't want this, but then your significant other comes in and is able to take over the conversation and get you out of that. That happens. Or have you walked into the store where they're trying to market something to you and somebody hands something to you, but your significant other kind of sweeps up behind you and carries you away from that conversation, so they have to go on to the next person. See, that's like having a wingman. They come bail you out of stuff like that, and that's great to watch, and it can be well executed. I've watched so many people do that, and you'll see it in the movies from time to time, but those of you that have parents that have been in long-term relationships, they do it all the time. In fact, it's that wingman kind of thing works in a parenting role, because when one of the parents might say no, and then the other parent, he says, well, okay, well, mom's going to say no, so I'm going to go ask dad. But nope, dad says no too, because mom and dad are on the same page, because they're each other's wingman. That's what I'm talking about. It's good stuff. And dad knows better than to go against what the mom says, because then dad's going to have a hard time with life. So, kids figure it out. But anyhow, it's a beautiful thing to watch. I love it. And I'm going to take a short break, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Remember how I opened this podcast with what I like about you? The wingman thing just sort of fits right together with that. Mom and dad are each other's wingman. And, creating your own wingman situation is pretty neat. So that's one of those aspects about relationships that makes you want to do it, because you can kind of create your own wingman, create your own kind of style. And, when you think about it like that, it kind of makes you want to dive into it and find it and make it fun. You create your own kind of code words and you do your own kind of things. So it's the fun part. So it's not just about, oh, geez, I got to find some way to have sex and get laid and then having the deceptive tactics about that. Women don't have to worry about the guy or in the conversation, because I was sharing that the guys are hunters, and how do you catch something? You got to do a little deception in order to get it into you, to run through your trap, and then when you trap it, then you do what you do to whatever it is you trapped. And if it's your girlfriend, or then you're gonna try to woo her to keep her, and as soon as you let her out of the trap. But yeah, and I'm just being metaphorical there. But the idea of creating a wingman in your relationship, that's kind of neat, because you're each other's partner, and it makes it that you're looking out for each other. And if you don't know what a wingman is, let me take you to a military concept of it. When two planes, when there was aerial combat, you have a plane that is the lead, and then you have the wingman. The lead is the guy that goes after the airplane and they're going to shoot it down. Now, the job of the wingman is to prevent the guy who's the lead from getting shot at, because he's always looking. And when you're flying in formation and you realize that the wingman is not only looking at the lead, but like I said, he's also looking around, and they protect each other. So if somebody should happen to come after the lead, the wingman peels off and goes after the person that's going after the lead. So that's the visual. And that's kind of where the term came from. And in life, a wingman is somebody who's looking out for you. So the way it is borrowing from that ideology is, a wingman and a lead are tight. They're close. They depend on each other. And from that, there's a lot of camaraderie. When you learn a lot about your partner, then you know their strengths and their weaknesses. And that's the job of the wingman, is to be able to cover the lead's back, and vice versa. So when you think about that in your relationship, doesn't something like that seem kind of fun and kind of like you want to do it? Because it just takes it to a different level. And I think that's great to have. You learn that interest in sharing and doing, and you know the importance of it, because that interdependent thing is exactly what it is. If you're flying in combat and somebody's on your tail about to shoot you down, see, that's not a good situation to want to be in. You got to have somebody that's going to get that person off of you. And as I did a little scenario, like somebody being at the front door, you got some salesperson is there, well, your wingman comes and rescues you out of that. I kind of like that idea, having a wingman. It's a cool kind of thing. It's the concept. You get it. Ladies, just so that you know, guys think it's kind of cool when their woman is a wingman, because that means she's been coached on, some of the finer points of the things that guys do. And, if you've had brothers, women, look, if you had a brother, you probably understand some of the things that guys do. So it's, being able to take it to the next level and understanding the man for the individual, and being able to share in some of that. For example, if the guy wants to go to the hardware store and you want to kind of, go along with him to sort of to ride shotgun and just get a peek into his world, or, maybe let him be your wingman. You take him along for some of the things that you like to do. And, guys are interested in knowing. Don't put it past them. They don't all just want to sit in front of the TV and watch the game. It's about how you indoctrinate him. You can coach him along to be your wingman, or you can kind of tell him he's got to fly solo and do things on his own. And now, guys will do that now. Okay, you may not always want that. So if you want a wingman, you're going to have to coach him along and kind of explain to him the rules of the game so that he will then be your wingman. And like I say, it's kind of fun to trade off once in a while, because I've always liked it. So I'm going to end this podcast by saying thank you again for listening. Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast, and today we've talked about what I like about you, what men think, and the concept of wingman. Put it into play, see how it works for you. I hope you're going to have a wonderful week. And until next time, I'm your host, John Johnson, in this Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.